Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences. My name is Tristan Sharp and I'm the Director of Programs and Engagement for the museum. And it's a wonderful opportunity to welcome you all here to the 2018 Regional Stakeholder Forum. I'd like to begin by acknowledging Australia's First Nations peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of the land, and I give my respect to elders past and present, and through them to all Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. As we meet on Gadigal land, I would like to start by inviting Auntie Millie Ingram to give us a welcome to country. Auntie.
Thank you, and I apologise for being slightly late. I blamed the government transport for that, and you always got to blame somebody else. Yes, my name is Millie Ingram, and I'm from Wiradjuri country in central New South Wales, and my family is a direct descendant of Windadyne. I'm pretty sure you all know about Windadyne, and we're really proud of that fact. But I'm also proud of the fact that one of my ancestors is a convict from Scotland who came out as a convict. But that's 200 years of tradition there, where the others are 60,000 years, so that bloodline is much stronger. So thank you for inviting me, and I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. And I support and pay our respects to all of our ancestors, yours and mine, because they're all involved in what modern Australia is today. And modern Australia today is a wonderful place. There's over 200 different nationalities that have arrived here over the past 230 years, and I like the diversity of our Australia today. I think it brings all sorts of different cultures, different foods, different ideas, and we all share this country together. But we will always be the traditional owners and the traditional custodians of this land. We have never ceded sovereignty, as everybody knows, to our lands. But today, as Australians, we are all custodians. We cannot blame anything, take blame for anything that happened 200 years ago, 50 years ago, or 40 years ago. Well, maybe I can, but 40 years ago. But today, we're all here, and we are responsible for what happens in our country today. And we all have to take an interest out and have a social conscience about what's happening. There's still too far many of our people that are being incarcerated, too many of our children still being taken for whatever reason, so we have to work on that. But let's do it together, not have blame here and blame there. Find out what the problems are and deal with the sources of the problem, not deal with the symptoms and come in after. But that's all the negativity I'm going to say today, because I think we have a wonderful Australia today, and we have been welcoming people here for over 230 years, because up in the north they were working with a lot of people from all the different Asian countries up there since the 1600s, as I understand it, and we're still welcoming, and I love my fellow Australians, and I addressed a lot of international people once, and they said, we heard Australia is a racist country. I said, Australia is not a racist country. I said, don't define my fellow Australians by the people that you read about in the Murdoch press or any other press. The majority of people are supportive, and I will always remember 1967, because yes, I voted then back in 1967, I was old enough, and 90% of the people voted for us to be citizens of our own country then, and I believe that 90% are still there. And that's the 90% that I define my Australia by, not the 10% that does other things. We have the most wonderful, and I'm so proud of Powerhouse, and I think you can have two powerhouses. You can have one in here, you can have one at Parramatta. You can have another one out at Casula, I think you've got. But it's just so wonderful to come in here and see the things that the museums have. And I see all around Sydney now, they've got the photographs of the old trams. I love the old trams. I wasn't on the very last ones, but I did ride on the trams, and every time I go to Melbourne, I just got to get on one of those trams for nostalgia. And I think that's what museums, this Powerhouse Museum does. It brings back memories for a lot of older ones. It shows the younger ones what a city is like and what it can be. And you, the folks that are involved in that, I salute you for the work that you do, because it is a wonderful museum. And I hope that we can go on showing our own people, because it's amazing how many people in our own city doesn't know all the wonderful things that are going on in our city. And that more of us, but not only our own people in our own cities, but people that are international guests, and show that we are a very good multicultural society and that we all work together and that we all support each other as Australians, because, like I say to our mob, Marcus would know, our mob can be divided sometimes, I said, they are our people, we are their people. All Australians are Australians, and we are Australians together, and let's do that. And let's make sure that we have a better future for all of our children. We protect the lands, the waters, and most importantly, all the people on it. And let's look at what a future Australia will look like, and let's fight towards that together. So I thank you for inviting me here today. And once again, I acknowledge the Gadigal people. And once again, I bid you a wonderful welcome, a wonderful life. And as you know, that the object of Welcome to Country is to welcome people onto country and give you safe passage whilst you're on country. So I hope you all have safe passage while you're on Gadigal land, and may you always walk in safety whilst you are here, and have a safe journey home. Thank you and welcome.
Auntie Millie, thank you very much. As always, wonderful reflections, and your ideas of mutual responsibility and facing our future together is a very apt one for this museum and this forum. I'd like to start by acknowledging, of course, the Honourable Don Harwin, Minister for the Arts. Welcome to you, coming back to the museum, Minister. Thank you for coming. Our colleagues from Create New South Wales, of course, Museum and Galleries New South Wales, Regional Arts New South Wales, but most importantly, you, our colleagues from the cultural sector, or from around New South Wales. Welcome to you all. The museum's mission is to be a catalyst for creative expression and curious minds. And in doing so, the museum must extend its reach beyond its key 3 sites, the Powerhouse Museum, the Sydney Observatory and the Museum Discovery Centre, to ensure that we serve the widest possible audiences across New South Wales. It is part of our raison d'etre, it is part of what we have always done and what we will continue to do. As such, the museum has a very active regional outreach program with engagement in regional New South Wales and also, of course, Western Sydney as a key strategic priority. Our aim is to engage both the professional sector, our colleagues, but also diverse audiences. Our strategy focuses on growing diverse audiences, on creating channels and access of exchange between our museum's expertise and the expertise that's in the regions, and of course to grow beneficial partnerships between us all for that common goal. As Australia's only museum of applied arts and sciences, however, our focus is not just on theory and ideas, it's also on the practical application of those ideas with tools, techniques and technologies to make a material difference to people and how they proactively engage with their world today but also into the future, how we can shape our future together. Many of you here today have been involved directly in regional outreach programs, how to curate, conserve and program your collections, or our digital mobile outreach programs, focusing on introducing new technologies and skills for young people and the wider community in digital printing. As we plan for a museum in Western Sydney, this engagement is only going to increase for us, and we're very excited by that opportunity. We will continue to deliver engaging experiences for audiences across all the STEAM disciplines, but of course across the arts and design as well. For us, the greatest opportunity we can bring is not just those disciplines in their own right, but the intersection of those, where innovation and new ideas can come from. From 2020, we will take our people, our programs, collections, exhibitions and digital experiences beyond the boundaries of our current sites. And we'll take them directly to audiences where they are and where you are, into communities. Parramatta, Western Sydney and of course, wider regional New South Wales. We will bring the best of who we are to the communities to share. We have a lot to give, we believe, but we also have a lot to learn, and we're very excited by that collaboration and how we will grow as a museum through that experience as well. This forum is the cornerstone of our regional strategy, a gathering of common purpose, and we're very, very proud to be presenting it in partnership with the Museum and Galleries New South Wales and Regional Arts New South Wales. Michael, thank you very much, and also to Elizabeth Rogers, thank you. That partnership is a very important one to us. Thank you. Today we have over 90 participants coming today from collecting institutions, big and small, from Lockhart, Albury, Wagga Wagga, Bathurst, Newcastle and many, many more. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come together here in your very busy schedules so that we can all discuss what we do and how we do it. I also want to acknowledge and thank all the presenters from the outset. Thank you very much for taking the time to share your learnings and your ideas so that we can expand and amplify those across our sector. I'm looking very much to learning a lot more today myself. I'm particularly looking forward to hearing from our Head of Indigenous Engagement and Strategy, Marcus Hughes, who will be presenting later today on the Indigenous Roadmap for Museums and Galleries. This is a very important initiative, which aims to facilitate discussion on how we best advance the participation and representation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in museums and galleries. And certainly for us, it is foundational work on how we will evolve as a 21st century museum. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and it now gives me great pleasure to welcome and introduce the Honourable Don Harwin, the Minister for Resources, Energy, Utilities and Arts, a great champion of the museum, and it's wonderful to welcome you back again, Minister. Thank you.
It's great. Well, I'd like to start by thanking Auntie Millie for her welcome to country, and I'd also like to acknowledge country, the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We thank their elders past and present for their custodianship of this wonderful land upon which this museum stands, and thank them and dedicate ourselves to working for more reconciliation in the future. Am I a bit croaky? Sorry about that. I just want to say good morning to everyone and thank Tristan for his welcome, and say it is a delight to be here with you today for what I think is a very important forum. And as I look at the presenter list and the program, just embodies so much of what I've been trying to achieve and the New South Wales government's been trying to achieve in the arts portfolio in the last 18 months. Let me start with Tristan and the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences. This forum embodies the outward-facing outreach program that this museum has always had, but which is from 2020, during a period of great renewal and change for the museum, going to be even more important. And so that just underlines how crucial what we'll be talking about today. An embodiment of what's possible is, of course, something that I'm really looking forward to, the Ideal Home exhibition, which is opening at the Penrith Regional Gallery on the 1st of December, and I'm so looking forward to going to that, because what a beautiful gallery that is, and the legacy of the Lewis family and the Lewis bequest. It's just going to be a great location for what I'm sure will be a outstanding MAAS exhibition there in partnership with the Penrith Regional Gallery. I see Elizabeth Rogers and Adam Ducian presenting to you. Regional arts has been critically important for us, and the Arts State initiative, which we're funding as a government, $200,000 a year, has already had two extremely successful outings, in Lismore last year and then Bathurst just a few weeks ago, where not only was there a fantastic dialogue between practitioners, but a really, really great arts festival as well. And finally, of course, we're hearing from a number of people from the museum sector, but I see Heather Travascus from the Green Scunya Museum at Lockhart, and Samantha Leah from the Museum of the Riverina. Of course, all of you know about the Regional Cultural Fund and how that's just completely transforming the museum sector in regional New South Wales. I've spent many days travelling to regional towns in the last 18 months, and I have to say I'm always inspired by some of the incredible local collections, but always slightly worried when I see the twinkle in the eyes of a lot of passionate people who've been keeping them going for so long, but are worried about their future. Worried about the incredible legacy from the past, the movable cultural heritage, and worried about what's going to happen. And that's made a deep impression on me. And I'm so glad that, for example, the Museum of Riverina has had a really big boost with its $3 million grant from the Regional Cultural Fund. And there are other major regional museums that have got similar support from that fund. But it's not just the big museums, it's museums like the Green Gunya Museum, which I was delighted to visit when I announced a smaller but very significant grant. Because what an incredible museum that is, one of the most well-run local museums, small museums that I have seen. An extraordinary collection of agricultural equipment, which was not very well provided for, but with the money they're getting from the Regional Cultural Fund, they are able to transform an adjacent building and bring that collection, an old Ford dealership, perfect sort of building really, with a great big factory almost space, which was a workshop out the back where they can bring the equipment inside. It's just going to be transformed, and it's a great way of preserving our rural heritage. And so I'm just delighted with all of that. And there's just so much else that's happening around the state. My personal, the one that's in fact attracted the largest grant was what's happening at Bundanon, a place where an extraordinary artist left an extraordinary legacy to the nation. But $45 million worth of paintings that were part of his gift, along with the property, have been sitting in a tin shed, no climate control, completely non-fire rated building, completely surrounded by bush. Unbelievable. Anyway, it was time someone stepped up, and even though it's a trust to the nation, New South Wales has stepped in, and we're providing $9 million to completely rebuild the collection storage and at the same time build a museum a museum, I suppose, an art museum, where those works can be shown, which will just be a wonderful boost to Bundanon and of course to the whole Shoalhaven community. So the Regional Cultural Fund really is something that I'm incredibly proud that I was able to secure. But for those of you, some of you might not know, one of the initiatives of that fund, which I think is really, really important and which I want to just speak briefly about today. We've provided almost $1.6 million through the Regional Cultural Fund to regional arts, screen and cultural organisations to assist them digitise their collections. Digitisation of regional collections offers opportunities to link geographically disparate objects and collections, helping us to grow knowledge, stimulate ideas and reach new audiences for the benefit of everyone in regional communities. But today, I'm very pleased to announce a further initiative, and that's that the New South Wales Government has granted Museums and Galleries of New South Wales $296,000 from the Regional Cultural Fund to develop a prototype website to assist the business case development for a holistic, sustainable, regional digitisation strategy that will roll out benefits right across the state. Today they're going to be showcasing their prototype website, which they're calling Collections and Stories, Developing a Model for Statewide Digitisation. Museums and Galleries of New South Wales has been supported by Albury, Bathurst, Broken Hill, Orange, Tamworth, Tweed and Wagga Wagga councils to gather the important regional stories that will now be accessible online both here in New South Wales and of course well beyond. The groundbreaking Collections and Stories prototype website is a wonderful example of what we might achieve as a state if we continue to take a more coordinated approach to gathering New South Wales stories and collections in one place. This is an initiative of which I'm very proud. A collaboration between my arts, screen and culture agency, Create New South Wales, and of course Museums and Galleries New South Wales. And I hope you enjoy hearing from Michael and Dr. Kate Gahan going into more detail on the project later this morning. Although our work on digitisation is still in its early days, the insights we can gain from the prototype website project will help Create New South Wales shape a regional business case for a state-wide digitisation strategy, which I think is really important. So, without further ado, can I just say I hope you have a great day. I hope there is a legacy that comes out of the issues that you will be discussing, which will be good for everyone right across New South Wales, because we want all communities in New South Wales, through Western Sydney, through the Illawarra and the Hunter, and through regional New South Wales, every community in New South Wales to feel they're getting their fair share of arts and cultural funding. That's our government's vision, that's our government's determination, and that, with the benefit of the strong economy that we have, is what we'll keep doing, pardon me for being political, if we're re-elected next March for another 4 years. So have a great day. I'm looking forward to working with you over the coming months and hopefully years to showcase your amazing collections for the people of New South Wales and beyond. And I declare this workshop officially open. Thank you.
Minister, thank you very much. It's wonderful to have you here, as I said, but the announcement of this initiative is truly exciting and something that we here at the museum are also focused very much on, to unlock the huge potential of all of our collections and connect them together. So thank you for that initiative. It's fantastic. My job is now to hand over to our organiser, our lead organiser. And in doing so, I'd just like to make a couple of quick acknowledgements, because as a Director of Programs Engagement, I'm one person. I'm very fortunate to have a team of 80 people, and I'm very proud of the work we do. And I just want to acknowledge all of my MAAS colleagues here today, but in particular our Head of Programs, Lily Katakazinis, of which Regional Programs sits, Sophie Harrington, the Public Programs Manager, but in particular Deborah Vaughan, who all of you would know, who works tirelessly across a huge breadth to try and focus where we can have impact working with you. Our regional programs producer. Thank you for your work, Deborah. Congratulations on today, and I hope you all have a wonderful time. Please welcome Deborah.
Thank you, Tristan, and thank you, Minister, and thank you, Auntie Millie, too. That was a really beautiful welcome to country. Good morning to you all, and thank you all for so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. Some of you have travelled long distances. I would really like to also welcome our partners, Museums and Galleries New South Wales and Michael Rolfe, and Regional Arts New South Wales, Elizabeth Rogers. They have helped in shaping this forum with suggestions of themes and ideas. But it's also our wonderful presenters that need thanking. They have travelled long distances, some of them, and given their time and energy to creating their presentations, and it's wonderful to have them all here today as well. Just doing a quick sort of tally of the breakdown of the attendees today, we have 43 regional museums and galleries, organisations, and Western Sydney who are here present today, 43. We have 6 museum advisors and 13 urban Sydney cultural and collecting organisations. So together we have a really rich base of knowledge and great opportunity for networking. So I really do hope you enjoy today the presentations that you're going to hear and the networking that's going on outside. Getting down to basic stuff, like morning tea is at 11, and that's a half an hour. Lunch is an hour at 12:20. We have instigated breakout sessions. There are 3 of them today, And I'll mention to you before lunch where you will meet for those breakout sessions that start at 2:35. Just a reminder, if you could turn your mobile phones off. And you have feedback forms in your forum bags with a little pencil. Please, I appreciate if you fill those in, and if you could drop your forms off in the grey felt bag on the registration table when you leave. That'd be wonderful. So, now to today's first presentation with Dr. Kate Gahan and Michael Rolfe, CEO of Museums and Galleries New South Wales. The presentation, Collections and Stories, Developing a Model for Statewide Digitisation in New South Wales. It's going to be a great initiative that Regional and myself are excited about. So please welcome Kate and Michael. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Tristan, Deborah, and Auntie Millie too. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. Thank you again, Minister, for your words, your kind words. If I may, there is a real buzz around New South Wales heritage, arts and culture created by initiatives of the government and by you as Minister, so thank you. For museums and galleries, it's been a busy year, as it should be, but two projects my team has been working on stand out. And I'll just digress from the big topic. We've reviewed our sector census every 5 years. A survey is carried out to update and quantify the work done by the small to medium-sized museums and galleries throughout New South Wales, in metropolitan Sydney, Western Sydney and regional New South Wales. But I'll come back to that work in a minute, because there's a way of weaving the narrative together. The second project over the last few months, on behalf of the state government, as the Minister has spoken about, we've been working on the Collections and Stories prototype website that profiles select collection items from a sample of the state's regionally based local government volunteer-run museums and galleries. Led by Kate, who's about to run you through a preview, the project is close to completion. This launch is its first public airing. Research undertaken to prepare the prototype, essentially what we've learnt through completing the work, is currently being used to help inform the development of a business case that the Minister referred to. It's a case to put to government for an ongoing program of documentation, of digitisation, that will be the core component of the website prototype model. So in talking about the value of collections and stories, I go back to the census, which will be published a bit later this year as well, and that in 2017, the most recent data set that filled the questionnaire involved, 5.5 million people visited the small to medium museums and galleries in New South Wales, more than the combined audience of our CI museums and galleries. It's a significant audience. The second point that came out of the census is that there are some 2 million objects in the collections of those places. This project, we've worked with 150 of those. Just to give you a bit of context there in the workload. So Collections and Stories is about broadening access to museum and gallery collections. It's about fostering enhanced regional tourism and visitor economy growth. And incidentally, the Australia Council published a report this week, International Arts Tourism, Connecting Cultures, and it reported on a number of statistics, but one that really grabbed my eye, and I'm sure yours, is that the most popular activity for arts tourists, people who come for cultural tourists, is to visit museums and galleries. Internationally, some 2.5 million in 2017. I think we all know that. When we travel, we go to these places. it seems that everyone else does too. So this project's also about strengthening local communities. It's about supporting a greater sense of place through storytelling and shared regional experiences. It's about documenting and directly linking your stories and your collections with each other and other state and nationally significant collections. So we hope you like it, and I firmly believe that we cannot overstate its potential and significance for the sector. The aspirations that we have for it will achieve. So before handing over to Kate, as some of you know, tonight we celebrate the biggest and most successful Imagine Awards event ever. Some of you will be there. We understand that others can't make it. No other event on the Museums and Galleries New South Wales busy calendar better demonstrates who we are and what we do. And I look forward to catching up with some of you there tonight. So thank you. And Kate.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I actually live and work in New South Wales, regional New South Wales, so this is a project that, you know, is close to my heart in many ways, given where I live. But just by way of introducing, I am going to step you through some of the key functions and some of the content on the website. But in terms of summarising, I guess, what we've done, as Michael said, we're profiling really a select sample from across the state, and it really is only a small sample. But we have involved 27 different organisations, and that's been both professional and volunteer museums and galleries. We're profiling 80 stories in the prototype and roughly around 160 objects attached to those. We're covering 16 story themes. We're looking at objects that cover 34 different material areas. And I'm telling you this because this is some of the ways, I guess, into examining the object stories that we've collated. We've got 12 different collection types. And the other really important thing or outcomes from this process is the connections that we're already seeing through or across the collections that we've been looking at. So around a quarter of the stories that we've profiled are connected, in fact, to state collections, and we think that that's a really important thing to highlight. There are many intra-regional connections between stories, and while we expect that, I don't think we should undervalue the value of that in terms of bringing to light new knowledge about local stories and places. And of course, there are interconnections between regions, and this is a little bit trickier, I guess, to calculate in terms of how we describe that, because those interconnections can be through things like material as well as theme. But I guess what's emerging in our sample is that the strongest interconnection between regional collections really is thematic. So I'm going to step you through, we've got a few different pages or key pages in the website, so I'm just going to step you through a few of those to demonstrate the different functions of the website. So essentially this is our homepage, and as you will see, front and centre of that is a map of regional New South Wales. That is because we're looking at collections from across the whole of regional New South Wales. One of the things that have informed developing the prototype was a workshop that was conducted in May 2018 with regional stakeholders. And one of the key things that they said that they would like to see on a website is multiple ways to enter into stories, to both be able to direct what you see, as well as just explore by chance object stories. So we've done that in, I guess, a few different ways through the website. And what you're seeing across that map is some of these story pins. Just turn that around. So I'm just going to step you first through some of the elements that you're seeing on here. So we have a very basic search function here by region. We also have a legend that is an entry point into those pins, and what we're seeing there are the different themes that we've been looking at across our stories. So we just close that again. We obviously have a menu that takes us, the collection stories is the homepage. We can go directly into stories, we can learn about the project, or we can contact. There's no one there yet, but we can still do that. So in terms of using the map, we're able to zoom in to the different areas. The pins themselves, as I said, are an entry point into some of the stories. And so at the moment you'll see a cluster of these pins at Broken Hill and at Orange, because they have been our major partners that we've been working with, and that's where most of the stories that are on the platform at the moment have been gathered from. So by clicking on a pin, so this pin here tells us that that story is about women. We can get a little bit of a snapshot as to what that story might be, and we can obviously do that with each of those pins. So I'm just going to first of all take you through the rest of the page, and then we'll come back to those and have a look at one of those examples. So under our map, or at the bottom of our map, is a timeline, and again examining or being able to explore stories through time was seen as an important thing, as well as themes. So what the timeline does is it takes us across different time periods. I'll just bring that back down actually. So it's a small screen. So it takes us across the different time periods, and as we search across them and stories are part of that time period, the pin itself goes from grey to colour. So that shows us that there's a story there relating to that time period. That's the wrong one though. Not this one here. So relating to that time period. And that time scale is a geographic time scale, so it goes well back to include things like our gems and minerals as well. So underneath then our map, we have a couple of story strips, and here's where we can, aside from going into stories through the pins, we can enter it just by looking at some of these thumbnails, and again just that little brief description at the top. So the first strip here is latest stories, and when there's more content in the platform, that will actually be responsive to the map itself. So if you move into, say, the North Coast, you will actually see stories from the North Coast appear along that strip. And then the other thing our strips do is that they scroll across so that we get a continuous line of stories across the page relating to what that story strip itself is referring to. Sorry. Okay, so under then the stories and new buyers, we have stories by collection and stories by theme. And again, these are some of those multiple entry points into being able to examine some of our stories. The other thing that's here on the homepage is we have a little icon here that is a guide, and it kind of is a prompt, if you like, in terms of directing you how to use the map to look at some of those stories, and we take that off simply by clicking back on that iGuide. So I'm just going to show you an example using the basic search by region. So if we go to the far west, again, if we click on the pin, it will expand it and show us the different thematic stories that are present there at Broken Hill. So we'll just go into one of these. So that will actually take us to a story page. And so each of the stories that are in the platform do have a story page, and the key elements of that story page are obviously a banner image of the key object attached to that page. Underneath that is the story itself. So again, one of the things that we were told that people wanted to see was a narrative around the objects, so a narrative that obviously put those objects into historical context. So that's what appears below that. So we have stories, roughly around 150 to 350 words. There's a little thumbnail map here, again locating where that object is, and obviously it's there in Broken Hill. Under the map is obviously the theme, but then there's these keywords which again allow us to click on, and it takes us to stories that are connected through those same keywords. So again, it's just another example of how we can enter into or explore stories. So most of our stories have more than a object attached to them, and so the other objects actually appear under the story itself. And in this instance, there's 4 or 5 other objects. But you'll see there's also on the side of those objects this little scroll bar. So this includes some of, I guess, the basic information attached to that object itself. And as you can see, it's things like description, location, date. Again, we've got some other keywords there that are attached to our other ways of being able to enter and see stories, and that being our themes as well as our materials. And then down the bottom, we've identified where our objects have connections, and this one happens to be a connection with the Museum of Arts and Sciences. Yeah. I did choose it on purpose, yeah. The other thing to show you on the story page is that with each of our images, we can actually zoom into them. And we do that just by clicking onto the hourglass, and then we can go right in and obviously scroll around to have a look at each of those as well. And that is with a function that's with each of our objects. So I wanted to now just show you, I guess, going from one of our keywords to what is referred to as the stories landing page. So this is a page that then comes up where when we click on say a keyword or one of our thematic pins, it will take us to a stories page, and it will include all the stories that either relate to that theme or are connected to that theme, because again, each of our stories, when they're put into the system, are allocated more than a single theme, because obviously stories often have more than a single theme. So if we're grouping here a series of stories that are connected by theme, it could be any one of those themes that are part of that story. So this is, as I said, an example of a stories landing page. So in this instance, we've searched for Broken Hill, and we've brought up all the stories relating to Broken Hill, or 6 stories relating to Broken Hill. And then underneath, again, we have that same formula of our story strips, and in this instance it's things like trending stories and latest stories. So again, it's just another way of circulating the different stories or objects that are in the system. So again, just in terms of demonstrating, say if we go from a Broken Hill story into, say for example, this story, the Cameleer's Coat story, you'll see here's an example of a story, that has more than a single theme, and you can actually explore the various themes attached to that story, and again, that will bring you back to that stories landing page. The other key function we have on the website is our advanced search page, and I guess this is really the feature that allows us to direct or clearly direct what we can do on the site. And you can actually access that from any of the pages just by clicking the hourglass. So I'm getting the wrap up here, so I'm just going to give you one example of an advanced search page. So for instance, we can search by keyword in here, we can choose our date range, we can go to our location, which is obviously by our organisation. So for instance, we'll go to Broken Hill Regional Art Gallery and we'll choose paint, for instance, and then update. And as you can see, alongside that, we have all our different story options coming up here. And again, by clicking on one of those, it takes us back to the story page, and it cycles all over again. So in essence, that's the key features that the web or the website shows in terms of, I guess, the different entry points and the different types of things or stories that are in the prototype platform presently. Okay. Did you want to talk about testing, Michael?
Just quickly, I think there's an opportunity for some questions too.
Yeah, sure.
We have a slide we're going to put up, and in a couple of weeks there's an opportunity for everyone here to have a go in and have a play with the website. And we're looking for, it's effectively testing and commentary, criticism, comments. There it is. So if you take down the comms at mgsw.org.au with the subject line company in, we'll send you a link to the website, and you'll be able to have a look, and there'll be the deadline there about any comments or feedback that you'd like to provide. When you have that opportunity, there will be the full range of objects that we're working with, some 150 or so, 75, 80 stories. So it'll be a more complex site. What's key about this project, however, it's not so much the prototype, although it's a great end result. It's what happens around business case outcomes and the kind of support that we're looking to apply regionally for this work to be ongoing over a long period of time. I mentioned the 2 million objects. We are looking at a hub and spoke model as a preferred way, perhaps. There's also an outreach model that's being proposed. But these are issues for the government in consideration as a result of a lot of the work that's being done in Create Infrastructure at the moment, and through some of the learnings that we have put together investing in this project, but also relying on the comments and feedback that people can provide over this next phase. So thank you. If there are any questions, I think there's an opportunity for questions. Yeah?
Thank you. I'm involved in a collection at Woodford Academy, part of the National Trust, and this is perfect because I'm working on a project now that I was very curious as to how I could get it out there. I want to go to Trove and see if Trove can do it, because my collection, the collection I'm working with is very much Bathurst based. It's all about Bathurst, the people there, the towns and regional central New South Wales. And I know not a lot about it. I know the person that's involved with it. It's a collection of letters. And I'm really seeking some sort of way in which all these 300 plus letters can be shared, and through that sharing be expanded, and my knowledge expanded, and also the people that hopefully will comment on it will be expanded. And so when I see something like this, my first thing is, how do I get involved, or how do I get to utilise this stuff so that I can share this little box of letters, hasn't been looked at, unusual story, for over hundreds of years, well, 120 years.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could
Well, obviously this is a prototype process, so presently we've just been funded to create the prototype platform. As you heard from Michael, the learnings from this are being inputted into the business case scenario with the hope that this will be funded into the future. So it, I guess, is dependent on that being successful, that we can then roll out and continue to work with the different organisations across the state to be able to include things like your collection of letters.
It sounds an ideal
It does,
inclusion.
definitely.
And that's the process we're working on, to get to you, to digitise the letters that you're talking about, the collection you're talking about, to create a story, to have it there.
I've got a question, Ian Stevenson, and it's really inspired by the Woodford question, and I believe the letters have been digitised. Is that right? Yes. It's really about that enrichment of collections, and I can see what you're doing is making connections so that when you have just a few examples of something in one place, you can connect to the other examples. I just wondered, will the model also allow the public to enrich the understanding of the collections, or will it just be very closely controlled as to where the enhanced research comes from?
Well, if the question is, will the content be moderated, my understanding at the moment is that that would be the case. There would be some concern about the authenticity of the information, but there may well be, as we develop the model, opportunities for input, comments, and perhaps alternative stories to be presented. That's not something that's been excluded by any means. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mic on the other side.
Hello, this goes off the last two comments. So have you in your prototype or in your planning thought how the technical infrastructure could facilitate participatory stories or people making contributions to this platform? Have you already thought of how that might work on a larger scale when you scale it up?
Not really, because essentially the prototype really has been about how we would go about including stories and connecting stories and being able to explore and search for stories. By no means have we, as Michael said, excluded that as an option. It's just that the prototype really hasn't done that yet. But one of the things that we will be doing is reporting on our learnings and potential add-ons, if you like, to the prototype. And certainly that's something that we will be considering as part of that.
So there's, how much did you say in here? It was 150 out of 2 million? Is that right?
Well, there's about 160 objects.
Yeah. Okay. In this current prototype.
That's right.
Out of a 2 million. So what is this 2
potential.
million? Sorry, my ignorance on what is the 2 million collection? Where is that coming from? Is that
It's coming from our data research about the size of collections in the small to medium sector in New South Wales across museums and galleries.
Yeah.
It's probably inaccurate, but on the lower side.
Currently, is that accessible anywhere on any kind of other archive or website?
No, but it will be accessible on our website soon when we publish the latest.
Okay. I was wondering if it was presented in a non-interactive form already, somehow. Okay. All right. Thanks.
It's just it's a question we asked really to get an idea of the capacity and the size of the sector. 5.5 million people visiting too, I think is a pretty astounding figure. 2 million objects is a conservative estimate of the number of objects in the collection across the state.
Michael, can I just say, my name is Carolyn, I'm from Create Infrastructure. It's probably important to context that this is part of thank you, Deborah. Just quickly, because I know there's not a lot of time, but we're at the beginning of this business case process, and any of you are familiar with how business case development works in state government, is that you go through several processes. So at the moment we're very much at the beginning. We're at the preliminary business case stage, which we're about to submit. All of what we've done for the prototype is just at the beginning. So this is what this could be, and we've got to go through several what they call gates, and it will develop over time. So this is just at the beginning, and all of the comments and the inputs and the questions you've got are really important for how we go through the next stage. So we're just going to go to the government through our assurance process to say, can we, is this a good project? Do you think we should keep going? Then we'll keep going to the next stage and the next stage. So it's an iterative thing that we're looking at least 6 to 12 months before we've got funding to then take this to the next stage. So, but it's really great to hear all of your comments. So there's a lot of need and want. So thank you very much.
Something that that they haven't been able to mention yesterday, which I heard yesterday in a previous presentation, was the difference between previous online collection things that existed like AMOL and Collection Australia. Was they're actually going to, well, in the profile that I heard yesterday, go out and assist the small museums where a lot of these really amazing collections exist, to put things online rather than expecting them to gather the skills and put them on, which is a real game changer for regional remote museum collections.
Yeah, look, the big end of this project is before what's on the web. It's about what happens to help it happen, and that's the really exciting part.
Okay, so would you like to put your hands together and give them a big clap? Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So now we come to the presentation, the Indigenous Roadmap to Museums and Galleries, and it's going to be presented by Marcus Hughes, Head of Indigenous Engagement and Strategy at MAAS. I'm sure you're familiar with Marcus and his amazing work that he's done at MAAS. So, Marcus, over to you.
Thanks, Deborah. And of course, I took the long way round to get down here. Look at all the familiar faces. It's sort of my annual get-together with the regional mob, and it's really lovely to see you all again. Auntie Millie. What an incredible woman. So elegant, so articulate. And when she gave welcome today, it was really lovely to hear, for me, to hear one of my colleagues reinforce that we've gone through incredible change in our lifetimes. And Millie referenced, I didn't realise that she was actually had a voting capacity in the referendum that then included me in the what do you call it? The census, as a citizen of Australia. So, for someone, and most of you know that I'm fairly new to the glam sector. To see the changes that are happening so rapidly in the world in which we live is pretty exciting. Here at MAAS, positioned on both land of the Gadigal and land of the Darug when we're over our other venues, our language is changing, and now we speak and are planning towards what organisations like us look like in a post-reconciliation context or a post-treaty context. What do bicultural institutions look like when you look at the models that are happening in New Zealand? So today, my little presentation, and it will be a little presentation, is stepping in on behalf of an incredible woman that we work with a lot and who has helped change the nature of Indigenous relations in Australia, Terry Janke. She's an ISUP specialist and has a great passion for making good the way in which we live and the relationships that we have. Terry couldn't be with us today, so she asked if I would step in and give some words about an incredible project that Museums and Galleries Australia have been implementing over the last 2 years. What I might do is go to my PowerPoint. And it's kind of tricky for old ones like me with bad eyesight.
Okay.
But something's happening.
Double click.
Here it comes.
And then do the little thing down the bottom. Yeah, a little bit further up. Go a little bit further. And then go.
So these are part of the changes that Donna and Millie and I were talking about. When we didn't have these flash things. And I've got a bit of paper here, and I've got a thing there, and I've got that, and I've got that. And I've got my direct report here, which is kind of scary. But at least the minister's gone, so that... Thanks, Deb. So look, it's called the Museums and Galleries Australia Indigenous Roadmap Project. So gee, it's hard to get in comfort. What this was about, thank you. What this whole project was about was doing an audit of how museums and galleries throughout Australia actually deal with Indigenous material, content, stories, objects, and what the opportunities are that are currently existing for Indigenous people, and how institutions into the future over the next 10 years might make change. So these 4 main activities, an audit of all of the institutions and seeing what they're doing, then reporting on that, looking at benchmarks, looking at case studies, developing the 10-year roadmap, and then updating principles in some previous documents that were developed to provide museums and galleries with some guidelines or informational or key pointers on how to deal with Indigenous cultural material and communities. Unfortunately, those early reports didn't really get the traction that they deserved and ended up sort of sitting in people's libraries or in the bottom of their desks. So for me, and this is probably where it becomes exciting, well, it becomes exciting for me certainly, is that we are now in a position where there are more senior Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff in cultural organisations so that we can push, we can advocate, and we can build the support and understanding that we need to move forward. So when Terry was going through this whole process, we spent a lot of time talking about what the needs were, and then there was this series of stages in the implementation of the project. And I'm hoping that you all got information about it, hopefully through your networks or through your support organisations. But that's the list of where we went. And there were a lot of workshops and consultations held across the country. And yeah, I hit the right button. So the literature review was really important. It gave a sense of what was pre-existing, what we had to work with, and how we could move forward on that. And then the audit. This was a voluntary participative activity. It was done by online survey and covered these areas. So it was really getting that sense of what the governance structures looked like in cultural organisations, what the opportunities were, and how people are currently engaging with Indigenous communities and material. So that report is available now online, and I'll give you the web location for that at the end of the session. but it provides some really compelling information that there is good stuff happening. It's just the knowledge is just not being shared. So again, what I think the beauty of projects like this are that they give us an opportunity to share that information, to come up to speed, and not to have to reinvent the wheel in isolation. It's just what are the mechanisms we have to bring us together for those kind of conversations. So with the workshops, these were the questions that Terry and I put together. In 10 years, what's it going to look like? How do we get there? What do we leave behind? What do we need to recreate, or what do we need to completely invent? And that really, the recommendations or the commentary that we got from the sector is what has informed the roadmap. So the map hasn't yet been released. It will be shortly. But there were sort of 5 key areas that really stood out as areas for action. And here they are. Looking at what opportunities might be developed within cultural institutions. How do we create culturally safe spaces? And that's not just for Indigenous people, it's for non-Indigenous people as well. And as Auntie Millie was saying this morning, you know, we have a shared custodial role. How do we make it possible for us to come together to speak about that business? Looking at two-way creating of treasures, and looking at ways of engagement, how we embed that, not just in the processes for working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, but how, excuse me, how those processes might inform leadership around the way that we as a whole community communicate, work and operate. And then, yeah, that whole process of connecting communities. They were the 5 priority areas. So when the report, the roadmap is released, it will have that series of points with some key recommendations at a high level to create the ongoing conversation points for the next 10 years. So once the report's released, there are other activities happening to make sure that it doesn't end up sitting in somebody's filing cabinet, that we actually all do engage with and participate and make things possible. So it is hoped that there will be funding to support staff to lead and act as the conduit for that information sharing, and looking at what the ongoing consultation and review might be. So, if you go to this web address, mgaindigenousroadmap.com.au, or Google MGA Roadmap, that will take you to the site that has absolutely all of the information possible. It's got the audit report, it's got the questionnaires, it's got case studies, review points. And I think from there you can get onto the mailing list and we'll receive more information about the map. So that's it from me. I said it'd be quick. And yeah, questions. Over to you. Oh.
I'm interested, Marcus, in the two-way caretaking of treasures, and if you have some examples of where that's already happened.
Yeah, and look, I'll speak to our context. I don't know whether I got to yarn with you about it last year, but as it would happen, Auntie Benita Mabo, Eddie Mabo's wife, you're familiar with Mabo and the land right title, land? Yep. Auntie Benita asked if we would look after 2 of Uncle Eddie's shirts. One that we think he got from Woolies in Townsville, and it was a favourite that he wore to a whole lot of his court appearances. And a spectacular floral lounge shirt that Auntie made for him. She also made a dress for herself and clothes for all of the 10 children in the family out of this same fabric. So it was probably around, yeah, it's a bit Von Trappy, but you know, absolutely spectacular. So she asked if we would look after those 2 shirts. And we were absolutely honoured to do that because we have a strong relationship with the Mabo family and such. What then happened was we looked at what the museum's process is for accepting objects into the collection. And as you would know, MAAS is an instrument of state government. So one of our beautiful senior curators, Matthew, did the paperwork and gave it to me. And it consisted of what looked like a contract and a thank you letter. And in the thank you letter, we thanked Auntie Bonita and the family for giving us this object for the collection and referred then to the deed of gift. And that's the formal contracty thing. So the deed of gift ultimately says that whoever gives us the thing no longer owns the thing or has access to the thing. It becomes owned by the museum and by state government. So I read it and yeah, I just had to say, Matthew, no, sorry. That's not what this is all about. And what we then had to do is go through a process that we're still finalising of developing a custodial deed of deposit. So that what we do is we acknowledge our obligation to care for this incredibly important pair of shirts that have uncle's DNA in them and auntie's DNA in them, that we are purely custodians to look after, and that the title will always remain with the family, the owners of that cultural material. So that then means that there is a really clear understanding between us and the Mabo family and the broad community of what our roles are in ensuring that our future generations have access to this really important material. So that's sort of one kind of example. The other thing is the way that I work with and my colleagues here, the way that we work together is really collaborative and respectful, and often challenging, because even though Millie was saying, yeah, we all come together and we all, are custodians, we all have very specific roles too, and there are really specific issues around protocol and what is appropriate. So when it comes to acquisition for the collection, to have a non-Indigenous curator go through the paperwork and then to write a statement of significance, it's kind of uncomfortable for me representing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities to have a non-Indigenous person making a value judgment about the significance of our cultural material. It's a bit along the the Great White Saviour complex that just does not sit well. For communities, since contact, we've not had the power to make decisions for ourselves. It's always been about other people, well-intentioned people, making those decisions on our behalf. In our ICIP protocol that has 10 guiding principles for this organisation. We acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are the experts in their culture. They are the ones that understand the significance. I will not ever understand the significance of a Bhutanese costume, but I know my community and what my values are, and how that fits together. So it's how do we make sure that the balance of power is equitable and appropriate? Does that help?
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Great. Oh, good.
We did have one last question over there from Rebecca.
Actually, it's not so much a question as just sharing some information. But first, I would just really like to thank you for that clarification of what the policy actually means. I would like to add and endorse the fact that I think this project is one of the most important projects that is currently underway in the museum sector. And look, Museums and Galleries Australia, which is the national membership association, is holding its the Museum National Conference in Alice Springs in 2019. And the reason for the choice of that location was because this particular project is so important and so critical to the development of the sector. So I would encourage you all to attend if you can, but certainly to follow the outcomes from that conference in May in Alice Springs in 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yay.